The towers of the Valoris homeworld stretched toward the sky like frozen lightning. They were made of something that looked like glass but wasn't glass. They had stood for 3 million years and would stand for 3 million more. Nothing changed here. Nothing ever changed. Hyunwoo stood at the window of his assigned quarters and looked out at the endless city. He had been on this world for 6 months now, and he still couldn't get used to the silence. Back on Earth, there was always noise. Cars honking, people laughing, dogs barking, children playing. Here, there was only the quiet hum of machines and the soft footsteps of beings who had forgotten how to hurry. He was 47 years old, which made him middle-aged by human standards. But here, among the Valoris, he was barely a spark of light in an endless night. The youngest Valoris he had met was 800,000 years old. They looked at him the way humans might look at a mayfly, a creature that lived for only a day. The door to his quarters opened with a whisper. Jiwon walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee she had made in their small human kitchen. She was 19, his daughter, and the only thing that kept him sane in this place where nothing lived and nothing died. "You're thinking too much again," she said, handing him a cup. The coffee was real, brought from Earth on the last supply ship. It cost more than gold out here, but some things were worth it. "I'm always thinking too much," Hyunwoo said. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. These small moments of warmth felt like rebellion in a world of cold efficiency. Jiwon sat on the edge of his desk, sipping her coffee. "I had another class with the Valoris students today. They asked me why humans waste time sleeping. I tried to explain that we need rest, but they didn't understand. One of them said, 'Rest is inefficient.' Everything is inefficient to them," Hyunwoo said, "except existing. They're very good at that." They both laughed, and the sound felt too loud in the quiet room. Across the city, in a building that had no name because names were considered unnecessary, Valora sat in her observation chamber and reviewed the day's recordings. She had been assigned to study the humans 6 months ago, and in that time she had collected more data than she had in the previous 10,000 years of her existence. Humans were strange. They moved quickly, spoke quickly, and seemed to feel emotions that Valora had no words for. They touched each other constantly, even when there was no practical reason to do so. They smiled and laughed and sometimes made water leak from their eyes, which they called crying. Valora had existed for 1.7 million years. In all that time, she had never cried. She had never laughed either. She had simply been, one day after another, doing her work, observing the universe, existing without end. The humans had been in the Galactic Union for only 3 years. They were the first mortal species to achieve interstellar travel, and the Valoris didn't know what to make of them. Most species that joined the Union were either immortal like the Valoris or lived for thousands of years. But humans? Humans lived for maybe 100 years if they were lucky. Some lived less than that. It was bizarre. It was fascinating. It made no sense. Valora watched a recording of Hyunwoo and Jiwon from earlier that day. They had gone to one of the observation platforms to watch the sun set. This was another human strangeness. The sun set every day. It would rise again tomorrow. It had done so for billions of years. Why watch it? But the humans watched it anyway. In the recording, Hyunwoo pointed at the sky and said something to Jiwon. Valora turned up the audio. "Look at those colors," Hyunwoo was saying. "Orange and pink and purple all mixed together. We won't see this exact moment ever again." Jiwon nodded. "It's beautiful." They stood there for several minutes, just looking at the sky, not speaking, not doing anything productive, just standing. Valora replayed the recording 3 times, trying to understand. The sunset would happen again tomorrow. The colors would be nearly identical. Why did Hyunwoo say they wouldn't see this moment again? And why did it seem to matter so much to them? She made a note in her files. Humans appear to value singular moments despite their repetitive nature. Further study required. The next day, Hyunwoo had a meeting with Kaylor, the administrator who oversaw all human activities on the Valoris homeworld. Kaylor's office was in the highest tower, a room with walls that showed the stars beyond. He sat behind a desk made of the same not-glass material as everything else, his face calm and expressionless. Kaylor looked like a human mostly. The Valoris had 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with 2 eyes and a mouth. But their skin was pale white, almost translucent, and their eyes were silver without pupils. They didn't blink. They didn't need to. Ambassador Hyunwoo, Kaylor said. His voice was smooth and even, never rising or falling. I have reviewed your latest reports. Your people continue to request modifications to their living quarters, warmer temperatures, different lighting, spaces for food preparation. These changes require resources. My people need these things to be comfortable, Hyunwoo said. He had learned to stay calm in these meetings, even when frustration built up inside him. We're not like you. We need warmth, we need good food. We need spaces that feel like home. Home. Kaylor repeated the word slowly, as if testing it. You are here. This is where you are. Why does it need to feel like somewhere else? Hyunwoo took a breath. Because we miss the place we came from. Because being comfortable helps us work better. Because we're human. Kaylor was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Your species is inefficient. You require constant maintenance. Food, water, sleep, warmth, social contact. You break easily. You stop functioning after only 100 years. And yet you accomplished interstellar travel. This is the puzzle I cannot solve. Maybe, Hyunwoo said carefully. We accomplished it because of those things, not despite them. Kaylor's silver eyes looked at him without blinking. Explain. We know our time is limited, so we work hard. We dream big. We push ourselves because we know we don't have forever. Illogical, Kaylor said. If you had forever, you could accomplish infinitely more. Hyunwoo shook his head. Would we? Or would we just keep putting things off, thinking we'd do them tomorrow? But Kaylor didn't understand. Hyunwoo could see it in his face, or rather, in the complete lack of expression on his face. To a being who had lived for 3 million years, the idea that time could run out was impossible to grasp. That evening, Hyunwoo and Jiwon had dinner with Taemin, the medical officer who had come with their delegation. Taemin was a quiet man, good at his work, and one of the few people who never complained about the food rations. I examined 3 Valoris today, Taemin said, pushing synthesized vegetables around his plate. Their biology is incredible. No aging, no disease, no cellular degradation. They're essentially perfect machines that never wear out. Must be nice, Jiwon said. Maybe, Taemin said. But I keep thinking about something one of them said. I asked if they ever got tired, and they didn't understand the question. Not just tired as in needing sleep, but tired of living. Tired of doing the same things year after year. They don't feel that. Because they don't feel anything, Hyunwoo said quietly. Valora continued her observations. She watched the humans eat together, talking and laughing. She watched them sleep, which seemed like a terrible waste of time. She watched them work and noticed how they would stop frequently to rest or chat with each other. Most interesting of all, she watched how they touched. Hyunwoo would put his hand on Jiwon's shoulder when he passed by. Jiwon would hug Taemin when he said something funny. They shook hands when meeting. They patted backs when saying goodbye. The Valoris never touched. There was no need. They existed near each other, worked near each other, but physical contact served no purpose. Yet the humans seemed to need it the way they needed food and water. Valora filed another note. Physical contact appears essential to human psychological function. Purpose unknown. She decided she needed to observe them more closely. She needed to understand what drove these strange, fragile mortal beings, who lived and died in the blink of an eye but somehow managed to reach the stars. The emergency alert came at 3 a.m, ship time. Hyunwoo woke to the sound of alarms and stumbled out of bed, his heart already pounding. Nothing good ever happened when alarms went off in the middle of the night. He found Jiwon in the hallway, still in her sleep clothes, her face pale in the emergency lighting. Taemin was already there, pulling up information on his tablet, his fingers moving fast across the screen. "There's been an accident," Taman said. His voice was tight. "The research vessel Endeavor. Something happened to their engine core. They're saying there was an explosion." Jiwon grabbed Hyunwoo's arm. "Minho was on that ship." Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. Minho was a young scientist, only 25, one of Jiwon's closest friends. They had gone through university together back on Earth. He was brilliant, funny, always making terrible jokes that somehow made everyone laugh anyway. "How bad?" Hyunwoo asked. Taman looked at his tablet. His face said everything before his mouth did. "There were 12 people on board. 6 survived. 6 didn't." Jiwon's hand tightened on Hyunwoo's arm. "Is Minho?" Taman scrolled through the names. His finger stopped. He looked up at Jiwon and she knew. She knew before he said anything. "I'm so sorry," Taman whispered. Jiwon made a sound, a small broken noise that came from somewhere deep inside her. Then she was crying, really crying, her whole body shaking with it. Hyunwoo pulled her close and held her while she sobbed into his chest. Down the hallway, a door opened. Valora stepped out, drawn by the noise. She had been in her quarters reviewing data when the alarms went off. Now she stood watching the 3 humans, trying to understand what was happening. Hyunwoo looked up and saw her. "One of our people died," he said simply. "An accident." Valora processed this information. Death. She knew the concept, had studied it in theory, but she had never actually witnessed the aftermath. The Valorous didn't die. She had never seen someone react to death before. "I see," Valora said. "The individual's functions have ceased. This is unfortunate. Will you require assistance with the disposal of the remains?" Jiwon pulled away from her father, her eyes red and streaming with tears. She looked at Valora with something between disbelief and anger. "Disposal? He was my friend. His name was Minho and he was my friend." "I apologize for my terminology," Valora said. She meant it, though she didn't fully understand why the words had caused offense. "I am attempting to understand your customs regarding cessation of function." "We don't call it that," Hyunwoo said quietly. "We say someone died. We say we lost someone, and we need time to grieve." "Grieve," Valora repeated, another word she would need to add to her files. Over the next few days, more information came in about the accident. The engine core had failed due to a manufacturing defect in one of the Valoris-made components. It was a tragedy, a random chance, the kind of thing that happens sometimes in space travel. The 6 who died had died instantly. They didn't suffer. This was meant to be comforting, but Hyunwoo could see it didn't comfort Jiwon at all. Dead was dead, whether it was instant or not. Minho's sister arrived on the next transport. Her name was Sunmi, and she was 28, 3 years older than her brother had been. She came to collect his belongings and to bring his body home to Earth for burial. Hyunwoo met her at the docking bay. She looked tired, her eyes empty, moving like someone going through the motions because motions were all they had left. "I'm sorry for your loss," Hyunwoo said, and meant it with everything in him. Sunmi nodded. "Thank you. Jiwon told me you've been kind to her. That means a lot. She and Minho were good friends." "He talked about her in his messages home," Sunmi said. "He was happy here. He loved the work. He said he was living his dream." Her voice broke on the last word. "At least he got to do that. At least he got to live his dream, even if it was short." Hyunwoo requested permission from Kaylor to hold a memorial service. It was a human custom, he explained, a way to honor the dead and help the living process their grief. Kaylor sat behind his desk, his silver eyes unblinking. "The individual has ceased functioning. What purpose does a ceremony serve?" "It serves us," Hyunwoo said. "The ones still living. We need to say goodbye. We need to remember who he was and what he meant to us. We need to grieve together." "This seems inefficient," Kaylor said. "The work must continue. Taking time away from duties to focus on someone who no longer exists serves no practical purpose." Hyunwoo felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. "With respect, Administrator, this is part of being human. If you want us to work well, you need to let us do this." Kaylor was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Very well. You may have 4 hours. I will allow Valoris observers to attend. Perhaps we can learn something about this human custom." 4 hours. Hyunwoo wanted to argue for more, but he knew it was the best he would get. "Thank you," he said instead. They held the service in one of the smaller human habitation areas. There were about 30 humans on the Valoris homeworld, and all of them came. They wore dark clothes, as was traditional. Some of them brought flowers they had grown in the small greenhouse, a tiny piece of earth in this alien place. Sunmi stood at the front of the room, holding a small box. Inside was a paper crane folded carefully from yellow paper. Minho made this when he was 7 years old, she said. He told me it represented hope. He said as long as we had hope, we could do anything. Her voice shook. I'm going to bury this with him. So he'll have hope wherever he is now. Several Valori stood at the back of the room. Valora was there, and Kalor and a few others. They watched in silence as the humans spoke about Minho. Jiwan stood up, her hands trembling. Minho is my best friend. We studied together, laughed together, dreamed together. He wanted to discover new forms of life on other worlds. He wanted to prove that the universe was full of wonders. She wiped her eyes. He made terrible jokes. Really terrible. But they always made me laugh anyway. And he was kind. He was so kind. Once I was having a bad day and he spent 3 hours just listening to me talk. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. Others spoke too. The captain of the Endeavor, a man named Do-hyun, talked about Minho's dedication to his work. Taemin talked about his curiosity and his brilliant mind. Everyone had a story, a memory, a piece of Minho they wanted to share. Then Taemin stood at the front and began to sing. It was a traditional Korean song, old and beautiful and sad. His voice filled the room, and many of the humans began to cry again. Even those who had never met Minho felt the weight of the loss. Valora watched all of this with intense focus. She saw humans embrace each other. She saw them cry together. She saw them laugh when someone told a funny story about Minho. She saw them hold hands. She saw them be together in their sadness. And she realized that this ceremony was not inefficient at all. It was necessary. These humans needed this the way they needed food and water. They needed to remember together. They needed to feel their pain together. They needed to transform their grief into something shared, something bearable. After the service, Sunmi approached Valora. Thank you for coming, she said. Valora tilted her head slightly. I do not fully understand what I witnessed. That's okay, Sunmi said. I'm not sure I understand it either. But it helps. Somehow being together and talking about him, it helps. He has ceased functioning, Valora said carefully. But you speak of him as if he still exists in some way. Sunmi smiled, though her eyes were still wet with tears. He does exist. In our memories. In our hearts. In the ways he changed us and made us better. That's what makes us human, I think. We carry our dead with us. They don't really leave us. Not completely. Valora processed this statement. It was illogical. The dead were gone. They no longer processed information or interacted with the world. And yet the humans behaved as if the dead still had power, still had presence, still mattered. Later, when everyone had gone, Valora found Hyunwoo sitting alone in the empty room. Why do you do this? She asked. Why focus on the absence when you could focus on those who remain? Hyunwoo looked at her for a long moment. Because Minho mattered. His life mattered. And if we didn't stop to honor that, to really feel what we lost, then what's the point? We'd just be existing like you do. Moving from one task to the next without meaning. We find meaning in our work, Valora said. Do you? Hyunwoo asked gently. Or do you just do it because you've always done it? Valora had no answer for that. As she returned to her quarters that night, Valora felt something strange. An emptiness, a discomfort. Something she had never experienced in 1.7 million years of existence. She didn't have a word for it, but the humans did. They called it sadness. Valora couldn't stop thinking about the memorial service. For weeks after, she replayed the recordings in her mind. The humans crying. The humans laughing. The way they held each other. The paper crane. The song. The stories about a person who no longer existed but somehow still mattered. She began to study humans more intensely. Not just observing from a distance, but actually talking to them. Asking questions, trying to understand. The other Valoras thought this was excessive. Kalor told her she was spending too much time on this assignment. But Valora couldn't stop. For the first time in her very long existence, she was curious about something. She started with an elderly human named Somin. Somin was 73 years old, which meant she was near the end of her functional period. She was a historian, brought to the valorous homeworld to document human integration into the Galactic Union. She had white hair and lines on her face that humans called wrinkles. The Valorous never got wrinkles. Their faces never changed. Valora found Somin in the human library, a small room filled with actual paper books. The Valorous had long ago converted all information to digital format, but humans still liked physical books. Another inefficiency, but one they refused to give up. "May I ask you some questions?" Valora said. Somin looked up from her book and smiled. Humans smiled so easily. "Of course." "Sit down." Valora sat. She had practiced sitting in a way that appeared more relaxed, more human. It felt awkward, but Somin seemed to appreciate it. "I want to understand death," Valora said directly. The Valorous didn't do small talk. They said what they meant. Somin closed her book. "That's a big topic. You know you will die," Valora said. "According to human lifespans, you have perhaps 10 to 15 years remaining. How do you continue existing when you know you will cease?" Somin was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We don't just exist, Valora, we live. There's a difference." "Explain the difference." "Existing is just being here, taking up space, breathing in and out. Living is finding meaning in the time you have. It's loving people, creating things, learning, growing, changing. It's making the moments matter." "But they end," Valora said. "All your moments end. You will cease, and everything you did will be gone." "Will it?" Somin asked. She stood and pulled a book from the shelf. It was old, the cover worn. This was my husband's journal. He died 5 years ago. But when I read his words, I can still hear his voice in my head. I can still feel what he felt. He's gone, but he's not gone. "Do you see?" Valora didn't see, not really. His biological functions have ceased. He no longer processes information. "But I do," Somin said gently. "I remember him. I carry him with me. And one day when I die, maybe someone will carry me. That's what makes death bearable. We don't really disappear. We become part of the people who loved us." Valora took the journal carefully. She opened it to a random page and read. The handwriting was messy, very human. The entry was about a sunset the man had watched with Somin 40 years ago. He described the colors, the warmth of Somin's hand in his, the feeling of peace. He wrote, "If I could live this moment forever, I would." Why did he want to live one moment forever? Valora asked. When he could have created infinite new moments. Because that moment was perfect, Somin said. And perfect moments are rare. That's what makes them perfect. Valora stayed with Somin for 3 hours, asking questions, trying to understand. When she finally left, she felt more confused than before. But it was a good confusion. An interesting confusion. Next, she observed a human child. His name was Ki-hyun, and he was 8 years old. His father was an engineer on the human delegation. Ki-hyun had black hair and missing teeth and an endless supply of energy. He was playing in one of the common areas, running and jumping and making loud noises that echoed off the walls. Valora approached him. "Hello, Ki-hyun." The boy stopped running and looked up at her. "Hi, you're one of the aliens." "I am Valorous, yes." "May I ask you a question?" "Okay," Ki-hyun said. He sat down cross-legged on the floor, so Valora sat down too. It felt very strange to sit on the floor, but the child seemed to expect it. "Do you know what death is?" Valora asked. Ki-hyun nodded. "Yeah, it's when someone stops being alive. Does this frighten you?" "Sometimes," Ki-hyun said. "My grandpa died last year. I was sad. I cried a lot. But Mom says he's in my heart now. How can he be in your cardiac organ?" Valora asked. "That is biologically impossible." Ki-hyun laughed. It was a bright, clear sound. "It's not really in my heart. It means I remember him. When I remember him, he's still a little bit here. Like I remember his voice and the stories he told me and how he smelled like coffee. So he's not totally gone. But he is gone," Valora said. "He has ceased functioning." "Yeah," Ki-hyun said. "But also no. It's both." He thought for a moment, his face serious. "It's like, you know, when you finish a really good story. The story is over, but you still think about it. The story is still with you, even though you're not reading it anymore. Grandpa's story is over, but I'm still thinking about it." Valora found this explanation surprisingly helpful. She made a note in her files. "Do you want to play?" Ki-hyun asked suddenly. "I'm building a fort." Valora had never played before. Play was another human inefficiency, but she said yes anyway. Over the following weeks, Valora discovered human art. She found that humans created things for no practical purpose. They painted pictures. They wrote stories. They composed music. And so much of it was about death, about loss, about the shortness of life. She found a painting by a human artist who had lived hundreds of years ago. It showed flowers in a vase, beautiful and bright, but some of the petals were falling. The title was Still Life with Mortality. The flowers were dying, but they were still beautiful. Maybe they were beautiful because they were dying. She read poetry. One poem talked about autumn leaves falling from trees. The poet wrote, "They fall and feed the earth, and from that earth new life will grow." Death is part of a cycle. Death is necessary. Death as transformation rather than ending. She listened to music. A human composer named Yunji had written a symphony called Requiem for Tomorrow. It was sad and beautiful and full of longing. Valora didn't understand why the music made her feel heavy inside, but it did. Kalor called her to his office. His silver eyes looked at her with what might have been concern if the Valoris felt concern. "Your behavior has become erratic," he said. "You are spending excessive time with humans. You are neglecting your other duties. You have been observed sitting on the floor with a human child. This is not appropriate for a Valoris observer." "I am learning," Valora said. "You assigned me to study humans. I am studying them." "You are becoming contaminated by them," Kalor said. "You are developing emotional responses. This is dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "We are Valoris. We do not feel as humans feel. We observe. We analyze. We maintain objectivity. If you begin to feel, you lose your ability to observe clearly." Valora considered this. It was logical. Emotions would cloud her judgment. But something in her resisted the logic. What if feelings are necessary to understand humans? What if you can't truly understand them without experiencing what they experience? "Then you accept that your understanding will be limited," Kalor said. "But you remain Valoris. You remain yourself. I am ordering you to reduce your contact with humans. Focus on data collection only. No more conversations. No more questions. Certainly no more sitting on floors." Valora left his office feeling that strange heaviness again. It took her several minutes to identify the emotion. She was sad. She didn't want to stop learning about humans. She didn't want to stop talking to Somin or playing with Kihyun or trying to understand what made these brief, fragile beings so compelling. But she was Valoris. She followed orders. She had for 1.7 million years. That night she couldn't rest. The Valoris didn't need sleep, but they had rest periods where they powered down their higher functions. Valora tried, but her mind kept working. She kept thinking about Minho's memorial, about Sunmi's paper crane, about Somin's husband's journal, about Kihyun's laughter. She thought about the fact that Somin would die soon. In 10 years, maybe 15, Somin would simply stop existing. All her knowledge, all her kindness, all her memories would be gone. And Valora found this thought unbearable. That was when she realized something terrible and wonderful. She cared. She actually cared whether Somin lived or died. She cared about a being whose entire lifespan was less than a blink of an eye in Valoris terms. This was not logical. This was not objective. This was not proper Valoris behavior. This was what humans called love. Valora accessed the human cultural database and searched for more information about death and remembering. She found countless examples. Humans built monuments to their dead. They wrote names on stones. They planted trees. They told stories. They created holidays specifically to remember people who had died. One culture had a tradition called Day of the Dead, where they believed the spirits of the deceased returned for one day each year. They set out food and flowers and pictures. They celebrated death rather than hiding from it. Another culture believed that a person died twice, once when their body stopped functioning, and once when their name was spoken for the last time. As long as someone remembered you, you weren't truly gone. Valora found this idea profound. The Valoris never died, so they never... The emergency alert came from a human colony world called New Haven. It was a small settlement, only 5,000 people, on a planet at the edge of Valoris space. The message was brief and desperate. Plague outbreak, spreading fast, need help immediately. Yunwoo was in the command center when the alert came through. He read it twice, his chest tight with fear. A plague on a human colony. People dying. Kalor was there too, reading the same information on his own display. "This is unfortunate," he said in his flat, emotionless voice. "We can provide medical technology. We will send automated systems to assist with containment. We need to go there, Hyunwoo said. In person. They need doctors, supplies, people who can help. Kaylor looked at him. The plague is fatal to humans. Going there would put you at significant risk. There are people, Hyunwoo said. We don't abandon them. Logical analysis suggests sending Valoris representatives would be more efficient. We cannot be infected, but you won't go, will you? Hyunwoo said, already knowing the answer. There is no logical reason for us to physically travel there when technology can serve the same purpose, Kaylor said. We would be exposed to an environment of death and suffering. This serves no function for us. Hyunwoo felt anger rise in him, hot and sharp. So you'll send machines, but not people. You'll help from a safe distance, but you won't actually be there when humans are dying. Correct, Kaylor said, not understanding the anger in Hyunwoo's voice. This is the most efficient approach. Hyunwoo turned away from him. Fine, then we'll go ourselves. Within 6 hours, a human medical team was assembled. Taemin volunteered immediately, as did 12 other doctors and nurses. Hyunwoo was going as the senior diplomat, and Ji-won insisted on coming too. Absolutely not, Hyunwoo said when she told him. It's too dangerous. I'm a xenobiologist, Ji-won said. I might be able to help identify the plague source, and I'm going. Ji-won, please. I can't lose you. She took his hands and looked him in the eyes. And I can't stay here safe while our people are dying. You taught me that. You taught me that being human means helping each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Hyunwoo wanted to argue more, but he saw the determination in her face. She was her father's daughter, stubborn and brave and too willing to risk herself for others. He pulled her into a hug and held on tight. Okay, he whispered, but you stay close to me, promise. I promise. Valora appeared as they were loading the transport ship. She stood in the docking bay watching the humans work. I am coming with you, she announced. Everyone stopped. Hyunwoo turned to stare at her. What? I am coming to the colony world. I wish to observe how humans respond to mass death events. This isn't a research opportunity, Hyunwoo said sharply. People are dying. I am aware. That is why I wish to observe. Valora paused. Also, Kaylor has forbidden me from going. Which is why I must go. Taemin stepped forward. You're disobeying direct orders? I didn't think the Valoris did that. We do not, typically, Valora said. I am discovering many new experiences lately. Despite everything, Hyunwoo almost smiled. All right. Come on then, but stay out of the way. The journey to New Haven took 3 days. During that time, the situation got worse. More infection reports came in. The death toll rose. By the time they arrived, over 200 people had died, and hundreds more were sick. The colony was built in a valley surrounded by purple mountains. Under different circumstances, it would have been beautiful. Now it looked like a place of fear. The streets were empty. Buildings were dark. The medical center was overwhelmed. They were met at the landing pad by a man named Jaewon, the colony administrator. He was 56 with gray hair and exhausted eyes. Thank God you're here, he said. His voice cracked. We're losing people every hour. Our doctors are overwhelmed. Some of them are sick now too. We'll do everything we can, Hyunwoo said. They set up in the medical center, which was really just a large building with rows of beds. The sick filled every bed and some were lying on the floor. The air smelled of disinfectant and fear. Valora had never seen anything like it. Humans lying still, their skin pale, their breathing labored. Some were crying. Some were too weak to cry. Family members sat beside them, holding their hands, whispering words that Valora couldn't hear. One of the doctors, a woman named Yuna, was clearly sick herself. Her hands shook as she worked and sweat dripped down her face. But she kept moving from patient to patient, checking vitals, administering medicine, offering comfort. Taemin saw her and immediately tried to get her to stop. You need to rest. You're infected. I know, Yuna said. Her voice was hoarse. But if I rest, who treats them? We don't have enough doctors. You're going to collapse. Then I'll work until I collapse. She moved to the next patient, her steps unsteady. Valora followed Yuna, watching her work. Why do you continue? She asked. You know you were dying. You could leave, evacuate, save yourself. Yuna looked at her with fever-bright eyes. And who would save them? Other doctors will come, not fast enough. Every hour I work, I might save someone. That's worth more than saving myself. How is that logical? Valora asked. Yuna smiled, though it was clearly an effort. It's not. But a life spent in service is a life well lived. That's what my grandmother used to say. I didn't really understand it until now. In another part of the medical center, Ji-won was working with the lab team, trying to identify the plague. It was a virus, that much they knew. But it was unlike anything in their databases. It spread through the air and attacked the respiratory system. Once symptoms appeared, people had maybe 72 hours. Hyunwoo helped where he could, which mostly meant organizing supplies and keeping people calm. He held hands with the dying. He helped family members say goodbye. He listened to last words and promised to deliver messages to loved ones on other worlds. Valora watched all of this with intense focus. She saw a young mother named Hana singing lullabies to her sick children, her voice gentle and loving even though she knew they might not survive. She saw Jae-won organizing the healthy colonists to record video messages for their families, just in case. She saw humans hugging each other, crying together, being together in their fear and pain. Most of all, she watched how they refused to give up. Even when the odds were terrible, even when death seemed certain, they kept fighting. They kept helping each other. They kept finding moments of kindness in the darkness. On the fourth day, Taemin got sick. He was working on a patient when he suddenly swayed and grabbed the bed for support. Ji-won was there immediately, helping him to sit down. "I'm fine," he said, but he clearly wasn't. His skin was pale and clammy. "You're infected," Ji-won said. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook as she checked his temperature. By that evening, Hyunwoo was sick too. It happened fast, the way it happened with everyone. One moment he was fine. The next he was burning with fever and struggling to breathe. Ji-won stayed by his side. She held his hand and wiped his forehead with a cool cloth and whispered reassurances she didn't entirely believe. Valora found them there, in a quiet corner of the medical center. Jae-won sitting beside her father's bed, holding his hand, her eyes red from crying. "Are you not afraid?" Valora asked quietly. "I'm terrified," Ji-won said without looking up. "Then why do you stay? You could evacuate. You are not yet infected. You could save yourself." "I won't let him die alone," Ji-won said. Her voice was firm despite the tears on her face. "No one should die alone. But you face oblivion with him." "By choice," Ji-won finally looked at Valora. "It's not oblivion. It's love. And love means staying even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Valora sat down beside them. She didn't speak. She just sat there, trying to understand this strange human concept. Love that was stronger than fear. Love that made someone stay beside death rather than run toward life. That night, Yuna finally collapsed. She had worked for 6 days straight while infected, and her body simply gave out. They carried her to a bed, and she lay there, barely conscious, her breathing shallow. Valora sat beside her. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "You could have saved yourself." Yuna's eyes flickered open. "Did we find the cure yet?" "Not yet." "Then keep working." She closed her eyes again. "Every life matters, even mine. Has to mean something." She died 20 minutes later. Valora sat beside her body for a long time, trying to process what she was feeling. This heaviness in her chest. This aching emptiness. This sense of loss for someone she had barely known. The humans called it grief. And for the first time in 1.7 million years, Valora understood why they needed ceremonies to honor the dead. Because death left a hole, and that hole needed to be acknowledged, or it would swallow you whole. On the 7th day, the research team found the cure. It was Ji-won who made the breakthrough, working around the clock, fueled by fear and determination. The cure was synthesized and distributed immediately. Slowly, people began to recover. Taemin got better. Hyunwoo got better. The crisis passed, but 47 people had died. 47 humans who would never go home. 47 lives ended. 47 holes left in the world, and Valora had witnessed it all. She had seen humans face death with courage and love. She had seen them sacrifice themselves for others. She had seen them find meaning even in loss. She had learned what it meant to truly live. Now she needed to learn how to say goodbye. The cure saved most of the infected, but it came too late for 47 people. Their bodies were prepared with care, their families notified across the vast distances of space. Some would be buried on New Haven. Others would be sent home to Earth or to other human colonies. Each one had a name. Each one had mattered to someone. Hyunwoo recovered slowly. His body fought off the virus, but the exhaustion lingered. He spent 3 days in bed with Jiwon rarely leaving his side. When he was finally strong enough to walk, the first thing he did was help plan the memorial. "We need to honor them," he told Jaewon. "All 47. Everyone who died here." "I've been keeping a list," Jaewon said. His voice was tired, worn down by grief and responsibility. "Their names, their ages, what they did here. I want people to remember them. They will," Hyunwoo promised. "We'll make sure of it." The memorial was planned for 3 days later, once most of the survivors were strong enough to attend. They would hold it outdoors under the purple mountains beneath the twin moons of New Haven. Valora watched the preparations with deep attention. The humans worked together, gathering materials, planning speeches, creating something meaningful out of their pain. They made paper lanterns, hundreds of them, each one painted by hand with flowers and stars and words of love. "What are these for?" Valora asked Jiwon. "We'll light them and let them float into the sky," Jiwon explained. She was painting a lantern with careful strokes, writing a name in beautiful script. It's an old tradition. The light represents hope. The rising represents the journey of the soul. And watching them go, it helps us let go too. Let go of what? Of the person we lost. Not forget them. Never forget them. But accept that they're gone. Accept that we have to keep living without them. Valora watched Jiwon write Minho's name on the lantern. Even though Minho had died months ago, Jiwon was still honoring his memory, still carrying him with her. Back on the Valora's homeworld, Kaelor learned of Valora's disobedience. She had defied his direct orders and traveled to the plague colony. This was unprecedented. The Valoras did not disobey. They followed their assigned roles for millions of years without question. Kaelor sent a message. "Return immediately. You will be removed from human observation duties and reassigned." Valora read the message and made a decision. She wrote back, "I will return after the memorial ceremony. The humans need to grieve. I need to grieve with them." It was the first time in her existence that she had put feelings before duty. It felt strange. It felt right. The day of the memorial arrived. The sun was setting, painting the purple mountains in shades of orange and gold. Nearly everyone who could walk came to the ceremony. They gathered in a field outside the colony, standing together in quiet clusters. 47 names were written on a large stone that would remain in this place forever. 47 lives reduced to carved letters, but also 47 lives remembered, honored, made permanent. Hyunwoo spoke first. His voice was still weak from the illness, but it carried across the field. "We gather here to remember those we lost, to honor their lives and their sacrifice, to say goodbye." One by one, people shared stories. A woman talked about her husband, who had been a teacher. He had loved terrible puns and made his students laugh every day. A man talked about his sister, who had been working on a novel that she would never finish. A child talked about her friend who had promised to help her build a treehouse. Yuna's name was called, and Taemin stood up. His eyes were red. "I didn't know Yuna well," he said, "but I watched her work. She was sick. She knew she was dying, and she kept going anyway. She kept helping people. She saved lives even as her own life was ending. That's the kind of person we lost. That's the kind of person we need to remember." The stories continued. Some people cried. Some people laughed at happy memories. Some people just stood there holding the hands of those beside them, drawing strength from shared grief. When the speeches were done, the lanterns were distributed. Hundreds of them, each one painted with care. Hyunwoo had one with his own name on it, not because he died, but because he wanted to honor his own fear, his own survival. Taemin wrote Yuna's name. Jiwon wrote Minho's name. All around, people wrote names of those they had lost here or long ago. Valora stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. She had not planned to participate. This was a human ceremony. She was just an observer. But Jiwon walked over to her, carrying a lantern. "Here," she said, offering it to Valora. "You should have one too." "But I have lost no one," Valora said. "Haven't you?" Jiwon asked gently. "You knew Yuna. You sat with her. You watched her die." Valora took the lantern with careful hands. The paper was thin and delicate, painted with small flowers. "What should I write?" "Write the name of someone you want to remember," Jiwon said. Valora thought for a long moment. Then she wrote Yuna in careful letters. The first mortal whose life had truly touched her. The first person whose death had made her feel grief. As darkness fell, the humans lit their lanterns. One by one, tiny flames flickered to life across the field. The glow was soft and warm, pushing back the shadows. Hyunwoo stood at the front. "We release these lanterns," he said, "to carry our love forward, to carry our memories toward tomorrow. We let go, but we do not forget. We say goodbye, but we carry them with us always." Together, everyone lifted their lanterns. The paper vessels caught the wind and began to rise, floating upward into the darkening sky. Hundreds of lights drifting higher and higher, a river of glowing hope flowing into the night. Valora released her lantern and watched it rise. She watched all of them rise, this beautiful ceremony of goodbye, and she felt something inside her shift. Something that had been locked away for 1.7 million years finally opened. Tears ran down her face. She didn't try to stop them. She let them fall, these strange, wet expressions of grief and love and understanding. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. Solomon was standing nearby. The old woman put a hand on Valora's shoulder. "You're grieving," she said gently. "You're saying goodbye to who you were." "I do not want to go back," Valora said. "Kaelor has ordered me to return, to be reassigned, to forget all of this." "Can you forget?" Solomon asked. "No," Valora said. "I do not think I can." Kaelor arrived on New Haven 2 days later. His ship landed in the colony square and he emerged looking exactly as he always did. Perfect, unchanged, eternal. He found Valora in the memorial field standing before the stone with 47 names. "You defied my orders," he said. His voice was flat, without anger or disappointment. "Just stating a fact, I did," Valora said. "You have been compromised. You have developed emotional responses. You are no longer fit for observation duties." "I know." Kaelor looked at her for a long moment. "You are crying." Valora touched her face and felt the wetness there. "Yes, this is not appropriate for a Valoris." "Perhaps not," Valora said. "But I cannot stop, and I do not want to." "Explain yourself." Valora turned to face him fully. "They broke me," she said. "The humans. They broke something in me that had been closed for 1.7 million years, and I am grateful. Grateful. You have been damaged." "No," Valora said firmly. "I have been awakened. For all my existence I have been like you. I have existed. I have performed my duties. I have observed and recorded and filed reports. But I have never lived. Do you understand the difference? There is no difference. Existence is existence." "That is where you are wrong," Valora said. "The humans taught me that living requires more than just existing. It requires feeling, loving, fearing loss, finding meaning in moments that pass. We Valoris exist forever, but we are not alive. We have never loved because we never feared losing someone. We have never truly celebrated because we never knew endings. We are immortal, but we are empty." Kaelor was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You want to stay with them? I want to learn from them. I want to feel what they feel. I want my existence to matter to someone, the way their lives matter to each other. If you stay, you will watch them die. All of them. Selman, Hyunwoo, Jiwon, all the humans you have come to care about. They will cease functioning and you will remain. You will grieve over and over. Is this what you want?" "Yes," Valora said without hesitation. "Because grief means love, and love means I am truly alive." Kaelor stood there processing. For the first time in millions of years, he looked uncertain. "I do not understand this." "I know," Valora said. "But you could. You could learn as I learned. All of the Valoris could learn. The humans could teach us what it means to live with purpose, to love knowing loss is possible, to make our existence matter. We have no need for such things, don't we?" Valora asked. "In all your millions of years, have you ever created something beautiful just because it pleased you? Have you ever looked at a sunset and felt joy? Have you ever cared whether someone remembered you or not?" Kaelor said nothing. "We are immortal," Valora continued. "But what good is forever if it's empty? What good is existing without truly living?" That night, Kaelor stayed for the small gathering the humans held. They ate together, shared stories, laughed and cried and held each other. Kaelor sat at the edge watching, just as Valora had watched months ago. And something in him, something buried under millions of years of emptiness, began to stir. 2 weeks later, Valora proposed an exchange program to the Valoris.